Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the London Borough of Newham Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Can everyone present hear me? That's those online. This evening meeting is held at Newham Town Hall. Members unable to join us physically at this location are able to join remotely. However, they will not be able to vote and their attendance won't be officially recorded, although their virtual attendance will be noted in the minutes. I would like to welcome the members of the public and press who are physically attending or watching on YouTube. With regard to meeting etiquette, members of the council, can I ask that you indicate that you wish to speak by raising your physical hand or your virtual hand? Please, can everyone be mindful of each other and please observe sensible etiquette to help to reduce the spread of the coronavirus. Please, can everyone be mindful of social distancing requirement during and after the meeting? For this meeting, we will be aided by Roger Raymond and Clive Menzel. This meeting of the London Borough Overview and Scrutiny Committee is now called to order. The first item on the agenda is welcome by myself, so welcome to you everyone for attending this meeting. The second item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Is there any apologies for absence?
Hello, Chair, we have apologies for Councillor Masters, Councillor Clark, Councillor Shah, and Paul Leslie, our co-op team, hoping to attend but maybe late.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other apologies?
Chair, my apologies for not being able to attend in person, but I am with you online. Thank you.
Noted, Councillor Chaudhry. Okay, the clerk will note those apologies for the record. The third item on the agenda is declaration of interest. Are there any member wishing to declare any interest? Any member? The clerk will note that no member wishes to declare any interest. Item 4, minutes of the meeting. The next item is the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of December 2021. I move as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the London Borough of Newham Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on the 15th of December. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Whitworth, second. Thank you very much.
Great.
Is that agreed?
Great.
Yes. Fifth item on the agenda and the substantive item for this evening is the Budget Working Commission report. The purpose of this item is to discuss and agree the Budget Working Commission report. The process of reviewing, this is a process of reviewing the proposal of the executive for the upcoming budget for 2022-23. The committee would discuss the draft report attached to the supplementary agenda. The committee will look and agree to the recommendation and finalize the report to submit to the upcoming cabinet, which take place next week. At this stage, I would make some opening remarks. After which, I will be inviting colleagues both present and colleagues online to make any contribution before I ask for the report to be formally adopted. Is that agreed?
Great.
Thank you. Colleagues and for members of the viewing public, it is the duty of the Budget Working Commission to satisfy itself and report to Council and Cabinet whether it believes that the budget of 326.8 million, efficiency savings of 3.7 million, and surface growth of 5.8 million as identified in the draft budget and final budget, in the draft and final budget and the delivery plan, where applicable, are realistic and deliverable in meeting the priorities identified in the corporate plan. Further, to ascertain what action has been taken to identify and address overspending, especially in areas where there have been the occurrence, and whether deliverables and realistic targets are in place to deal with these issues. During the budget scrutiny process, a number of challenges came to the fore, not least of which are the continued financial pressures on the budget. And as a result of the coronavirus, children and young people placement and the directorate staffing, temporary accommodation, and one source, to name a few. Colleagues, the coronavirus pandemic continued to present negative cost pressures on the council's budget. Its cost pressure this year, 2021-22, is 29 million. Despite repeated demand, the Boris Johnson Tory government has not kept to its promise to reimburse local government for the full cost of the pandemic. The council spent in good faith to protect the people, to protect and provide for the people of Miram, on the government instruction to do whatever it takes. Government's failure to fully reimburse the council has left it with a coronavirus pandemic funding gap of over 10 million this year, despite our barrier being amongst the hardest hit by the pandemic. Colleagues, I also recognize that this administration is committed to continue delivering high-quality service for the residents of Miram, whilst addressing the budgetary pressures and delivering a balanced budget. I commend and place on record the administration effort in reducing the period one budget overspend of 12.5 million to 1.1 million in period two. This is by no means an easy feat. Colleagues, the Children and Young People Directorate has had a better year in terms of budgetary performance. This has been achieved against the backdrop of them preparing for a crucial Ofsted inspection while grappling with the challenges of staffing and placement. Notwithstanding, it would be remiss of me not to urge a general word of caution and to emphasize the importance of the need for effective budgetary control to maintain and to ensure overall corporate fiscal discipline and to maintain on track and to remain on track or further reduced. Not all identified savings and income generating initiatives have been fully realized for 2021-22. Regular overspending by some service departments remain a consistent issue and still needs to be fully controlled. However, the Budget Working Commission is minded to consider that the pandemic has had and continue to have a detrimental effect on some of the directorate financial performance in respect of the same. The general fund reserve is being replenished, but marginally below that which has been forecast. However, this must be viewed in conjunction with the budget that allocate 10.7 million for inflationary pressures, temporary accommodation, increase in national insurance contribution, and the COVID contingency, to name a few. At the same time, at the start of the 3 years medium-term budget strategy, I said that for several years, some aspect of budgetary and financial management, namely efficiencies and transformational savings, have not been as effective. Thus, not all identified savings and income generating initiatives has been fully realized, even after allowing for a reasonable margin of slippage. Regular overspending at some service area has also been a consistent issue and still needs to be fully controlled. I went on to say, a combination of factors is responsible for these less than satisfactory outcomes. These include savings projections that are sometimes overambitious and risk repeating a systemic issue. Service area intelligence views to inform savings are not always reasonable and balanced. A lack of financial control at the service delivery frontline and cultural issues that the mayor is addressing via the restructuring of the council's organization as a whole, which includes the culture change program and a new internal government regime, which when implemented, will make the council more effective and responsive. I can without prejudice now say that the issue I previously commented on as outlined above are no longer obstacle in the way they used to be, something for which the council as a whole and the residents of Newham in particular represents substantial positive progress. Like all local authorities in England and Wales, Newham continues to face difficult challenges with setting its annual budget. The national context remains one of continued austerity for local government, diminishing central government grants. Newham has had over £200 million cut in the share of government grants since 2010. And as I note above, due to the deficiencies of the Tory government, the coronavirus pandemic has cost the council over 10 million more than the central government fund. This is worsened by the cost of living crisis, which is already biting and will only increase the impact. And while affected most, the disproportionality hardest it will be, the disproportionality would hardest it be marginalized and less well-off minorities. Colleagues, the council has put forward a robust budget which charts a positive way forward for the council and continues to put residents first in all the provision it makes. Progress is in the right direction, for which the mayor and executive are to be commended. This praise comes with a cautionary note, however, and the challenge remains to keep in place financial controls, improve even further the projection layer, and to continue to bring fiscal discipline to bear in order to bring order to budgetary objectives as set out in the final budget report. Thank you. I now open for contribution from colleagues. Is there any colleagues wishing to make any contribution? John.
I'll just say that I very much support the recommendations that have been made, and it was very good to see, for example, recommendation 5, there's greater information to the residents about the contours of the budget, so that they understand a bit better how the money is being spent, and also to give them an earlier involvement through the community. It's very good recommendation. I've got a question about recommendation 2, because you start by saying, which I understand well, that you need to be informed in a timely manner and to have the resources to have the meetings in good time. But recommendation 2, you say the protocol should be strengthened by making more granularly explicit all aspects of the role and functioning of the Budget Scrutiny Commission. I just wondered what you had in mind here.
Yes, thank you.
We're thinking of.
What we have had and done is, as you have been a party to that, we have had the executive scrutiny protocol, which was agreed some councils back, and that is beginning to be embedded. However, what we haven't got is a protocol that governs our working relationship between the executive and the budget commission. And so in going forward, we'd like to put in place a protocol that governs our relationship and how we work in terms of timely exchange of information, etc. So that is basically what I have in mind, putting in the framework. Because as you know, in fact, in that protocol, budget commission are more or less exempt from it, because for the very nature, we have a tight deadline in which we work. Exchange of information cannot go through the 2 weeks in which we normally present an expected return, sometimes within days, sometimes within hours. So it's to take that into account and make that operationalized.
Yeah, I understand very well the need for that. I just wondered what you were referring to. Okay,
That's it. Yeah. Any other?
Behind you, Chair.
Right behind me, Chair.
Josh.
Oh, 180. Thank you, Councillor McCormick. I wondered, has our public health grant been settled? Are we aware of exactly how much it will be at this point? Or are we still waiting for figures from DELUC and the Department for Health on that?
I am not aware of any settlement of the public health grant. I'm not aware whether any of my colleagues can help me. Has it been settled?
I don't believe so.
No. Yeah.
If I may ask a supplementary then, Chair.
Yes.
At our last meeting of Budget Scrutiny Commission, it was commented that the only variance to our knowledge at present is whether the increase in the public health grant will be at the inflation rate in December or the present inflation rate. And that's, to my recollection, £2 to £3 million of variance that we were unsure as to whether we would have or not have. Is there any indication from anybody online whom I can't see, perhaps, that we have a date of finding out when we're going to, finding out what the amount's going to be and what the rate of inflation will be in the grant?
We do not have any, I don't think we have any of the finance officers online to be able to answer that question, but what we can do is make a note of it and pass it on to the corporate finance team or the public health team to see if we can get some answers to you.
It's certainly an area of concern, Chair, because obviously we were unable to scrutinise the public health budget for next year if we're not sure what level of inflation we're going to be granted. And that's not the fault of anybody new in the national government, but I imagine that other local authorities are in a similar position, and it's very difficult for the public health team, with the great work they've done over the past 2 years, to plan for the future as we come out of the pandemic without knowing how much money we're going to get from May, which is imminent.
Noted is something that colleagues have been commented on. During presentations by officers, the question has been asked repeatedly about the public health grant. And as of now, I don't think any of us know what the settlement will be. Any other colleague? Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I didn't know that my colleague Councillor Garfield was going to mention this, but I think it's a very important point he's raised. And it's also latches on to 2 points, if I may, not completely unrelated. One is that because of the pressures last year that we didn't know the public health grant, we're even in a more bizarre situation that in the middle of a pandemic, central government hasn't indicated whether it's inflation proofed or not even released a figure. But we're not holding our breath, although it's going to be a very generous settlement. But aligned with that, as we're now having, I hope, a sort of standing commission, not just one that's reactive, but proactive, I think that we did have in our, because we can't put it in a recommendation, because you can't recommend what you don't know, but I think it was in the spirit of our discussions that we were going to personally as a separate body, look at how there would be an opportune time, particularly in the post-COVID sort of, or current COVID planning, to look at how we might realign certain aspects of that budget. So I think it's quite a useful point that we can insert in our minutes, Chair, to sort of inform the public watching, but also the executive that, you know, this is not going to go away, and it's important that we have a proper examination of it. Because all officers could do at the time when they presented to us was just sort of put the same figures in the same bit of the next column on the spreadsheet, as it were. So I think it would be an opportune moment to sort of flag up that we're looking at the priorities within the public health grant spending. Can I make my other point, which is totally unrelated? Paragraph, and you know where I'm going with this, Chair, because I was on the commission, but page 115 of the supplementary agenda, paragraphs 44, 45, refers to the use of capital receipts. Because of timescales, as often the case, not just in this authority, but as I think contributions from yourself and Councillor Garfield have shown, that very often we're at a disadvantage in terms of the scrutinising process, because we have to focus rightly, because it's the priority about council tax setting or the budgets or adult social care or children's, that we sometimes neglect, and it's difficult to frame in terms of recommendations, but our use of capital receipts. So paragraphs 44 and 45 draw allusions to that the capital receipts of 20 million, not a mean sum, I would say, that could be replenished. In order to replenish those, it'll be about the disposal of property. And because I think Councillor Garfield and others have raised at this meeting and elsewhere, we don't know what inflation is going to be like, that, or the property market. So I think it's very important we flag those up now. I know this is a reaction to what the executive have proposed, but I think it's useful that we flag it up. And the next one is about the rational assumptions behind our increase of non-statutory fees and charges. A lot of those, it gives me an opportunity to say in public, a lot of the charges in the area I'm concerned about currently with my responsibilities are set by central government. So there are some ludicrous positions in licensing law, not to be confused with landlord licensing, where we can't charge what I think would be commercial rates for somewhere like, shall we say, Stratford, that is now the busiest station on the networks, etc., and all the rest of it. So I think, you know, it's a chance for us to attach to the report that the known unknowns, or whatever the phrase is, you know, that we flag up now that we've got public health grant capital receipts, but also fees and charges, and that we shouldn't put blame elsewhere. We need to look at our own house in terms of, I think, realigning public health, but also capital receipts, bearing in mind three great unknowns at the moment are inflation, obviously energy costs and cost of living prices, but also the property market when people are reorientating where things are in relation to London property values compared with the rest of the country. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Noted in the...
I'm not sure it's a question in so much as just a question or something I just wanted to raise around the Children and Young People's Directorate budget, where I think my understanding of the documents I've got is that the Budget Working Committee made a recommendation that there was a zero-based review of that budget last year, and it's the same recommendation this year. And I just wanted to know whether that had been noted, that hasn't either taken place or happened. Just in light of an Ofsted review that is about to come out.
That recommendation has been made twice because this commission is trying to get the executive to carry out such an exercise. They did not do it last year, and that's why we're reiterating it again this year, that they carry out such an exercise, because this commission feels that it would at least put the children's services in good stead. The executive argument is that obviously they need to continue driving efficiency savings, and so therefore they would like to see that every department directorate do as much as they can to achieve these savings. It's something that we've reiterated again, and we have to wait for the executive response. Councillor Daniel Ipakwe.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just very quickly, I've just gone back through and just to draw colleagues' attention to the fact that at the Cabinet meeting recently, the public health grant for 22-23 was announced and that it's increased by 2.8% on the previous year. And the final budget allocation to NERM is 32.6 million. One thing I would say about that is I do think as a committee, it would have been good maybe if the clerks had picked that up to feed that into the committee. Not every single member is going to watch Cabinet, but I think as a committee, we should, have our eyes and ears open to relevant information. In terms of what I wanted to say about the report, I worked on it as well with other colleagues. And I think one of the things that stood out to me was the tremendous work that's been done to reduce that deficit. Like you said, it's no mean feat, and it really isn't. Millions and millions and millions of pounds has had to be saved in a very short space of time. So I don't normally, but I will name check Councillor Terence Paul for the work that he's done along with Conrad and some of the other officers. Not easy, very difficult, but ultimately they stepped up to the plate and they delivered. The second point I wanted to touch on was management controls. I think this is what will set up occurring overspends don't happen again. I'm happy to see that seems to be more entrenched, let's put it that way, in the authority, and people are starting to get the message that recurring overspends are not going to be tolerated year after year after year. So in summation for me, I think the report shows that the borough's on a firmer financial footing than otherwise would have been had that swift action on management controls and also the reduction of the deficit not been taken. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you, Chair.
Welcome. Thank you, Councillor, for your intervention. Any other member?
Am I allowed to come back, Chair?
Yes, you are allowed. I'm trying, because I cannot see.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't want to take it if anybody's on screen trying to.
Colleagues, I cannot see, and I've tried to use my next. I got new pairs of glasses.
I defer to Paul Leslie, who has got his hand up, and then I'll come back after Paul. I'm very generous to Paul, as you know.
Neil, you are always extremely generous, so thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chair. I also wanted to echo what Councillor Daniel was talking about in terms of the amount of work that has clearly gone into this document, and I thank the Budget Working Committee for that. I guess the key point for me is recommendation 7. It was alluded to earlier. 2 points really. One is about the overspend and the work that has been done to reduce that. I was questioning whether there were potential downsides in terms of that, in terms of the actual service being offered to children and young people, and whether or not we could get some more information on that going forward. I think there was a request for a review, a mid-year review, so it'd be useful if we could get some feedback at that point. And then there was another reference, Chair, to a COVID budget. I can't remember if it was recommendation 6 or 5, but it talked about 2.4 or potential funds not being used for a COVID contingency, and whether or not, if we find that there are some challenges within the Children and Young Persons Directorate, that rather than necessarily go to reserves, which is what the recommendation clearly says, that those funds could potentially be used to underpin some of the work with children and young people, which is really valuable in the borough. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I didn't get the first one that you were saying, but the second observation that you've made, yes, that 2.4 that is set aside for the COVID, should the council need to use that money for COVID. You're correct. If that money is not being used, or whatever is left over will be put towards the reserve. Council has a strategy to replenish the reserve, because the council used 9 million of the reserve last year. So far, for this financial year, it should replenish it to 7 million. It is 6.1 million that so far that is projected. However, one thing that this commission has noted, Councillor Paul could have taken the easy way out. He could have say, instead of putting 10.7 million to cover stuff like national insurance contribution, inflation, the COVID relief things, he could have easily taken 1 million from that and to put into the reserve, and he would have answered the reserve question. What he's done is take the hard decision to put aside contingencies, which we made for a rainy day. So basically, those contingencies that are sitting there, if they're not used, it will be then replenishing the reserves. And I think that was a brave decision to make, because he could have taken the easy way out.
I understand that, Chair. I think the first point I was...
And the first part of the question, which I didn't get, you were mentioning about the children's services budget.
And the savings that they had made, which was mentioned previously, not only in the report, but by Daniel, Councillor Daniel. And I'm saying that there was an agreement, there is an agreement for a mid-year review, if you like, or a quarterly review in terms of the impact of some of those budgetary savings. And I was saying, should it prove or come through that review that some of the services are adversely affected by some of those budgetary shifts, that it might be possible to review, or possibly should review, the decision around the 2.4 million potential underspend on COVID, that some of those funds may well be diverted to support the services, the much needed services for children and young people in Europe.
Okay, thanks for that contribution. That would be something that we would have to take up during budget monitoring. And as you were sitting on this overview committee, you will have a chance to monitor the reports, the budget reports, the performance reports, and when that time comes, you would hear them. But we've noted it will be in the minutes. We draw it to the attention of the cabinet member concerned, that whether they will consider doing that, or whether they'll just put it into the reserve.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Lee Parker.
Yeah, oh, was you ready?
Yeah, I was.
Oh, no, go on, you go first, sorry. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, if I can do three at once.
Three?
One is...
Right, so I have Councillor to bring in. I allow you one first, and then I see how long it goes. And then, yeah.
Well, people say things in meetings, you see, so it's quite good to have a debate rather than just, you know, a question
Okay,
and answer.
one first now, Councillor, and then we see how it goes.
It's quite nice to just respond in a sense, because Paul wasn't on the budget working party, and it's killing two birds with one stone in a way. And Ellen's behind me, and she'll know that there's a national issue regarding, for instance, special needs higher funding within children's services. That's been historically a problem over the last 3 or 4 years, I think I'm correct in saying, Ellen. But I'm on Paul's forum representing a local authority, and there's been some robust discussions there. There's a national issue with the whole area of SEND funding in children and young people services. And Paul, you'll know from my background that the idea of non-statutory versus statutory provision within the whole idea of youth provision has been one that's been nationally argued from this chamber to central government, and not always been listened to with open ears. But the review process is certainly one that we said last time. But I would want to, as in the spirit, I think where Daniel was coming from, pay tribute to children and young people services in terms of greatly reducing the reliance on agency staff in a very difficult environment with children's social workers. And across the council, I want to pay tribute to that, because we've paid a lot of money in the past on agency staff. So that's in adult social care and in children's social care. But I think it's a point well made that the review needs to take place. But that's why I'm alluding to this idea that the Budget Working Commission, as I think we're now calling ourselves, is not seen as a reactive one that's just responding to the executive budget, though that's obviously its key role, but there's also this in-year monitoring and what the progress is. Because we did get a commitment from the cabinet member and the director that this review, notwithstanding the Ofsted pressures, is needed, and that is shared across local government, and it's a cross-party thing, you know. So I think I've put all three in, but I've deferred to my learned friend because I've had enough time already.
I noticed, Councillor Wilson, and thank you very much. Your comments are noted, because there isn't a question really for me, just an observation, a comment you are making. So, Councillor Lee.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. I've only got one thing. My point is just in response to what Paul was saying, Paul Leslie, in regards to the effects of the budget and the outcomes on services. As chair of crime, I know there was cuts some years ago to the to the enforcement budget. And I, as a chair, took that upon myself to look at the ramifications of that as it played through the system in a way that I don't feel that the Budget Working Commission would be able to, just because some of it obviously was quite granular in terms of the minutiae of the detail we were looking at, the effects of the financial decisions that were taken. So my only recommendation to that point is to say that I think chairs of scrutiny should probably have a look at the ramifications on the areas that they scrutinise, and that would probably be a more sustainable way of having a look at what the long-term effects are on the decisions that are being made in the budget, not to take away from the fact that Budget Working Commission should look at, half yearly, how they're getting on, what's going on. But in terms of the effects on the services, I think that should firmly sit in the ballpark of the chairs and their committees. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other member, do you want to make an observation, Councillor?
A question.
A question?
Yes.
Let me go ahead. And after Councillor, I don't think there's anybody else, so that's it. Then we would move to the vote. Yes.
Okay. Recommendation 8 about monitoring savings. There is any percentage we are looking to achieve, or is only a strategy savings, like with no aim or a percentage they need to present in June 2022?
Okay, so recommendation 8 is basically asking or saying that the department should present progress on saving strategy, in particular, as they are achieving efficiency and savings committee to. So basically what we are asking is for the departments to bring to us their savings strategies. Because the Budget Commission wants to satisfy itself that their savings and these savings are in line with what the departments are forecasting, and we also have a duty to see whether they have strategies to do so, because in my opening remarks I said we have to satisfy ourselves so that we can say to colleagues on the council that we are agreeable and we recommend the budget going forward on the assumption that these efficiency savings would be made, and they cannot be made unless there's a strategy to make certain that they will be and they're achievable. And I also said, last year at the beginning, and this year, in fact, in period 1, we had a 12.5 million deficit, projected deficit. As of now, that is 1.1 million. I know that Councillor Paul and Conrad has worked tirelessly in bringing that to where it is, because in the intervening period, Councillor Paul and I, we were having conversation, and we were also taking him to task at budget scrutiny and at overview and scrutiny about the same and the deficit, because obviously we were nervous that projected overspend was too large, given the reserve position, etc. He's done us all proud as a council in terms of bringing that to 1.1. That hasn't been achieved as far as I can remember since I've been doing budgets, such a large reduction in one financial year. So he must be commended for that. But then we also have done some work there by holding him to account, and he's doing what he's supposed to do. And we obviously, we would continue to hold him to account. And once he keep those financial controls there, get those strategies, obviously, that 1.1 million, he has shown me that he will continue. The year is not done yet. So let's watch this space and see, right, toward the 1st of March, whether that 1.1 million become just 500,000 or even in the black, who knows?
Okay.
Yeah. So colleagues, having said that, Budget Commission, I've looked at the proposed budget that will be taken to Council on the 28th. It's the 28th of this month, is it not? Constitution 28, yes. To vote upon, we have come up with some recommendations. The executive would be responding to these recommendations. But all in all, as chair of the Budget Commission, I am satisfied that the council is on the right course with the controls that they've placed and the work that we've seen that is documented, that the council is in the right place in terms of managing budget. And as a result of that, I would recommend that we agreed to our report. So can we have a show of hands of those present? And can I have a show of hands of those present to adopt the recommendations and present our report to the mayor and the council? Right, so we have how many voting members? 2 behind me, right? So, and this one is only so can I clarify that? It's only elected members on this committee can vote. So the co-opted members and the Church of England member cannot vote. It's only the elected members. So can I take that again? Have we got that? Thank you. That's unanimously. So thank you. Item 6 is the date of the next meeting. The date of the next meeting will be the 22nd of February. I've noted. And before I go, sorry colleagues, I have 2 pairs of glasses. I have some new glasses this, and I'm not thinking they're doing me justice in terms of the reading. So I'd have to get it sorted out very soon. So thank you for attending. I see you on the 22nd. This meeting of the London Borough Review and Scrutiny Committee is now come to a close, and the time is 19:46. Thank you.
Well done.